the Hawley Hamlet here. Right now we are taking some of the green beans that we planted in the springtime and we're doing a harvest after the harvest. So we weren't able to harvest all of our green beans. We overplanted, but we're going to take those beans and we're going to do another planting for the kind of midsummer to fall cycle. So just because you planted your garden one part of the year doesn't mean you can't do other plantings throughout the rest of the year. So you can kind of look at the foliage here. It's, the bean beetles have eaten it up. It's died a little bit. And then these are the beans that were left on. They're really brown and dried up. But that's exactly what we want to have happen. Is when we get inside there, some of them might have been desiccated, but these dry beans here, this is exactly what we want for our seed. So I'm gonna take pods like this, these dried pods, and we're gonna put them into our bucket here, and then we're gonna take this over to our empty patch, which used to have potatoes on it, and plant beans there. The reason we're planting beans where we used to have potatoes is because potatoes are nightshade plants, so they steal a lot of the minerals and nutrients from the soil, particularly nitrogen. And then these beans are nitrogen fixers, so they'll help replace some of the nitrogen that has been removed by the potatoes. In the front of the hamlet, of my house in the hamlet, and we've got 2 rows of green beans that we planted where our first potato harvest used to be of the year. So we're setting up new green beans that will still be okay, but we got these going a little bit earlier and they're just doing really well. One of the things we're experimenting more with is drip lines. I'll actually come over there and show you. These 2 beds are connected to one hose, and you can see in here this brown drip line. It has a bunch of holes, really small holes on the side of it, and you leave it on for a number of hours and it just let it drip into the soil, and that moistens the soil and really efficiently actually waters the plants. And it's great for things like green beans that they have a pretty good canopy, so they keep moisture in. And I'll do that for a couple hours every other day to keep them moist. And they're doing really well. So this is just kind of a reminder that we've got green beans that we're about to plant, we have green beans that we already planted, and green beans that we harvested earlier this year. So there isn't one growing season in the summer, there's a number of different growing seasons, and if you really want to make the most use out of your yard and the space that you have, you can do multiple plantings each year. So I've got my bucket of the beans that I've harvested, and I'm just going to split them open. You can see that this one's all dried out and has some beans perfectly ready for planting. And so I'm gonna we've already plowed this row and gotten the soil kind of loose and ready for planting. And then I'm gonna, at this corner, put a bean in there. And then I'm also gonna put another bean in with it in the same spot, just in case that one doesn't sprout. And then you can plant beans actually pretty close. So I'm gonna just go a few inches to the right of it and put another 2 beans. And really you can take, this is kind of, I guess, the nice part of not being able to harvest everything is you've got a whole bunch of seed there that you don't have to pay for. When you're doing that, it's one of the things you want to look at to see if it's some sort of heirloom seed variety. There's certain seeds that'll have more kind of endurance as far as being able to be replanted, while some seed varieties with each replanting will lose a little bit of their quality of growth. So just another thing to keep in mind. Something we do is we have these little sticks, and it's just kind of our way of remembering, okay, that's where I put the last bean. So as I keep planting, especially if I have to go run off and water or pick something up, I can remember where I was at. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows here, and that's pretty standard for most of our beds. If your beds are too thick, the only disadvantage of that is you won't be able to get to all of your plants without really walking across your bed. And when you walk across your bed, you compact the soil. And what we want is soil with as much organic matter usually as possible, especially if you're in the city working soil that was formerly, just a grass yard. So you want organic matter, and you want it to stay light. You want it to be fluffy soil. You don't want it to be compacted and hard, because then water can't penetrate through it normally. Okay, so there's that row. The sunflowers, which is these are just these Russian mammoth, just giant sunflowers. I think this one's probably close to 10 feet tall, and was actually taller, but they're getting ready to be harvested. They're almost ripe. You can see that by the way they're bending over. Some of the other signs that you're looking for, if you have sunflowers that are edible sunflowers, now not all sunflowers are edible, but the ones that are will start to droop over like that, and then their leaves will start to die back, and especially the yellow, the sunflowery part of the sunflower will shrivel up. And this is a really good example of a head that I'm gonna harvest now. You can see it's kind of bent back. It's kind of sprawling backwards from what it used to look like, and these little flower heads on the top can just kind of crumble off. And what you see here is this black and white striped color. Now it can be different depending on what type of sunflower you're working with, but a lot of the standard sunflowers that you would eat look kind of like that. So what you can do is, it's easy for this because I'm tall enough and the sunflower is bending down, so I can just cut through it and I've got my head. And now it was important I cut this off when I did, because these patches here, this is either birds or squirrels that are getting into it. So sometimes you want to harvest your sunflowers a little bit earlier, even though they could still maybe dry out a little bit. It started to die on the top, so you see this separation and you see this yellowing. That's usually a good sign that it's ready to go. I'm going to open up one of these seeds, and hopefully most of them should be ripe and ready. Now, it's not going to be probably as big as some of the sunflower seeds as you buy at the store, but as long as we get a functional seed. Yeah, see, there we go. It's smaller, and maybe could have waited a little bit longer, but you also have to risk the plant falling over, animals eating it all up. So this is going to be good. Let's take another one too, and I'll see if I can find a better one. Yeah, that's better. So we've got a seed here. You can see it in this shell. So that's what we're looking for. It's not necessarily ready to eat yet. It's too wet. We want to dry out our sunflower seeds. So what we can do is, it's easiest just to take this whole head and stick it somewhere that, like in a basement or on a shelf, or somewhere that you're okay with it just sitting there in a while. Somewhere that animals can't access it, and then we'll let it dry out, and once it's dry, we'll take a spoon and we'll just break the seeds off from the sunflower head, and then we have our sunflower seeds. I'm here in the favorite pollinator garden we have in the hamlet. Here we've got a lot of coneflower. This is this purple flower right here, or echinacea, and we've got some milkweed and some bee balm and some other plants like the black-eyed Susans over there that attract butterflies, like monarchs, and some other varieties here. And this is what we're looking for, is a space that space that features native plants, so that bumblebees, butterflies, and other insects that are useful to our ecosystem can eat from it. If there are a lot of plants that are really beautiful that a lot of people have in landscaping, but they're not necessarily native plants, and if something like a bumblebee, which comes from the Americas, reaches in one of those plants that is not from the Americas, it can't necessarily eat from it. So we need plants that the insects have evolved around, and they've learned how to use those plants as a food source. The monarch butterfly is extremely picky because it'll only eat one variety of milkweed plant. Is the only food source it has. So if you want butterflies, plant milkweed, as well as all of these other flowers. I'm just getting some familiarity with, but these are our ground cherries, and this is kind of what we're looking for as far as like when it's ripe and ready to pick. I think you can pick them earlier and let them kind of ripen inside or dry out through that. But if you're looking to just pick fresh and you've got some ground cherries, they kind of grow in the same lifespan that tomatoes do, around the same season as for planting and harvesting. But if you kind of leave them in these little these pods, they look a lot like, they're probably related to tomatillos because they look very similar. But you can open them up, you'll see this usually like yellowy, golden kind of fruit. It's a little bit sweet and tangy, kind of like an orange and a tomato all in one, and they're called ground cherries. Let's see if I can find some more. In this bed we've also got drip lines set up so that we can water. We need to do some weeding, but so it goes. Okay, so here over here we can see this is another one that's about ready. And we're looking for these pods, but yellower. Oh, here we go.